important is reading, being able to read music. Like, of course, you know, people can just ear roll it if they want, you know, parts or pick it up as they go in and whatever it is. But how has being able to read music and write out your own charts, how has that helped you?
My dad used to play just for fun, and so when I showed an interest in the drums later on, he was like, okay, if you're going to do it properly, learn to read and do all this stuff. So luckily at my secondary school, they had drum lessons, and I signed up for the drum lessons. And immediately it was like, okay, this is how you read and play rudiments and all the bits and pieces. I was trying to get into the business, but a lot of the gigs required reading. These days, there's loads and loads of gigs you can do where you can just learn the tunes. But the problem that I had is that, and luckily I had the skills to do it, is that I got really busy and I just didn't have the time to learn like 3 gigs worth of tunes that are in 3 days' time. Or if you go into the studio and they're wanting to do a track, you could listen to if there's backing to it, you could listen to it a couple of times, have a chart done. You might even be like half an hour ahead of everybody else in the same position. Time is money in the studios, and if you can do the session in like 20 minutes, they're going to book you again because, you know, why wouldn't they, you know, rather than taking the day to do it. So, so yeah, for me, the reading was important because when I came up, I was trying to get into because I loved jazz and big band when I first started, you know. I still do, but that was the type of thing that I got hip to in the beginning because of one of my drum teachers loved that type of music, and you know, some of the drummers that I connected with in the local area, they were all into jazz and big band drummers. So Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, Louis Belson, you know, Kenny Clare, all those guys, and yeah, they were all readers, you know, so. Being able to sit in with a big band, and back in the day, this was a thing that happened a lot. There was loads of rehearsal bands all over the place, and you could just drop in there. If you were asked to come and do it, there would be a pad of tunes like this deep, you know, and they'd call out number 65. You'd open the pad, put the chart up, 1, 2, 1. They'd count it in, and you'd play it. And that scenario led into me doing function bands. Once I got into one function band, my first function band was Andy Ross's orchestra, and Andy Ross used to be the MD for the Come Dancing TV program before it was Strictly, and but he used to do like dance competitions and weddings, like a lot of society weddings and functions on Park Lane in all the posh hotels. But again, same deal. There's a pad of music or 3 or 4 pads of music. So if we did a Jewish function, you know, Jewish wedding or something, there's a whole pad of music for the Jewish music, and then there's a whole pad of pops, and there's a whole pad of, you know, easy listening swing tunes. But you just had to read. So the only way that I could kind of get into the business from that kind of perspective was to be able to read really, really well. And as soon as I got into that band, all the other bands heard that I was doing this gig, and that I was, at the time I was in a band called the National Youth Jazz Orchestra, and they were like, oh, you must read. And I was getting calls from all of these other bands because I had the skill set to do it. As I said, fast forward to today, there's loads of, in those function bands or wedding bands or whatever there are these days, most of them, there's no music. So you have to learn all of the stuff, and no 2 bands play them exactly the same, so there's always going to be variations which you probably might not know just jumping from one band to the other. So these days it's used less, but the language of music is universal, and if I can say, oh, when we start the tune, what's the count in? Is there an anacrusis here? Is there a fill over there? What's the form of this? At least I'm more informed with if I can speak the language of music. Is it a 32-bar chorus, or how long's the bridge? Where's the shout section? You know, I can ask all those questions only because I'm a little bit more educated musically. It just makes me more of a well-rounded musician, I think. Yeah.
I guess it probably depends what kind of things you want to do. I mean, it's a funny one because when I do theatre things, it's like, oh man, I'm off book week 1 or even before we get there because I can read, you know, and then you see other people struggling or it's really hard for them. But you think, even if you can just break down you know, a bar of 4
Yeah.
or something, or just recognise certain rhythms within it, recognise certain patterns, arpeggios, or whatever it is. It puts you in good stead. You don't have to be like, you know, like Ema. You don't have to go mad and be like reading movie soundtracks or anything. But just having a little bit of the skill is important.
For sure.
I mean, in so many universities now, it's like, or getting onto music to do music degrees. It's like, no, you don't have to know any music, no harmony and theory. And you're thinking, what? And you're thinking, these people are supposed to be going on to a degree, you know. How can you not know, you know, your key signatures and, you know, I just find it quite bizarre.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not even that thing of, like I said, wanting to sing on or to play on movie soundtracks or anything. It's about just making your own life easier, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because, like, you can write out a chart and be like, oh, I'll read it, and, like, have a little look over it and have a little listen at the same time, so you're not completely dependent on the chart. But, man, that's a lot of listening.
I think
if you can't look at a chart.
I think there's a certain amount of skill within and around that, and experience of doing that, where you can be out of the chart. Because, you know, if you don't read so well, if you try and do that, sometimes people are just stuck. Their heads are in the charts. If you've got a bit more experience in and around that, you can look at a chart and see the bigger picture. Or if you've done it, you know, they call it cheat sheets, don't they? Where it just says, OK, the intro is 8 bars. Oh, the verse is 8 bars. The chorus is 8 bars. Oh, then we go back to the verse and chorus again. Oh, OK, that's... And you can see that from a chart if it's, you know, if it's coherent enough. Which is, for me, and I tell my students this, that one of the things, or the beauties of that, is that a lot of the gigs that I do, I've charted myself. So if I want to go and do another gig, I can say to my dep, who's going to come in to do it, I say, oh, there's charts. Oh, great. And if he reads, he can come in and do a great job, because at least he can, if he's got time to rehearse the stuff, he's got the charts there to go by, or read it on the gig, or do whatever. I've taken care of the gig by making sure that there's somebody who can come in and do it. That's not to say that other guys can't, because they'll just take a little bit longer just to learn it sort of parrot fashion. And that's actually a really good way of doing it, because they're off book. They're out of the music, which is always good. So it has its pros and cons, you know, and because I was so busy years ago, I had to read. And some things, we were doing the 10 Rooms gig, it became a record company showcase. So every Monday we would back maybe 3 or 4 artists doing 3 or 4 tunes each, plus doing the gig afterwards. And it was like, I've got that, and I've got 2 days teaching, and I've got 4 gigs at the weekend, and I'm doing this, that and the other. I don't have time to learn all that volume of material.
And it's not a case of putting down people who can't read.
No,
not everybody has to have the exact same skill set, or we wouldn't be different people. And I would rather have somebody who's got the most incredible voice, or the most incredible kind of like, you know, like facility on the drums or whatever, over somebody who can read the hell out of something and actually it's stiff and dry. Like, you'd rather not have the dryness. You'd rather have
both,
fabulous. The balance of the two would be amazing. And as I said before, it just makes your life easier.
For sure.
So from doing Nigel and then being in Andy Ross's band, people then started hearing of you. First of all, you've played with lots of famous people. So you MD'd the Drifters for years, and you've played, and you obviously did the 10 Rooms. So then you had Will Smith and Amy Winehouse, Backstreet Boys.
A fan.
Like, lots of people would come through. So let's know. And also you played with people like Vera Lynn and Roy Castle and things like that. You know, such a varied kind of range of artists, you know. So obviously your ears had to be open to lots of different genres. And what were the different kind of scenarios that you found yourself in? Like, was it like some were readers, some were just like, you know, tell me a bit about it.
Because I was in Nijo, there was 2 bands with Nijo, National Youth Jazz Orchestra. So the first band was kind of like the gigging band, and then the second band was like what they called the rehearsal band. And it was like the idea was that the players would get good in the second band and feed into the first band. That was the whole kind of ethos around it. Paul Eshelby, who played trumpet and flugel in the BBC Big Band at the time, was running the second band. Chris Dagley was the drummer in the first band. And I used to share the second band with another drummer. So every 2 weeks, I would do the second band rehearsals. And bless him, Paul started, as soon as I started to be, you know, because I was so keen, and I would just, like, because of my lessons with one of my teachers who was just a genius, I would just be practicing all the time, and I just got better week on week on week. And he's just started to recommend me for loads of stuff. And I remember one of the first things that he recommended me for was a summer season with Max Bygraves. So I was just past my test, so I was like 17, 18 or whatever. And that's where I played with Vera Lynn. So on the bill, and this is kind of going back to the old cabaret days, summer seasons and all that type of thing. So with this one, Max would have his kind of show that he did, and I think the first half was all the supports, and then there may have been like 3 or 4 people that came in to do the first half, and they'd all do a few minutes each interval, and then Max would do the second half and do that. And again, there was charts, so I had to read, because I could play a number of different styles, and, you know, I mean, most of the stuff there was like easy listening, brushes, big band, jazz, kind of crossover stuff. That was well within my wheelhouse, so it was like, okay, I can easily cover this. All the other guys were readers as well, and again, in terms of kind of progressing in the industry, that sort of influence of different people coming in and out of gigs. Oh, I'll recommend you for... And that's the way that networking used to happen, and it was like sort of word of mouth, really. But yeah, so that was one type of gig that I would do, more cabaret type things. And then a little bit later, when I was doing the 10 Rooms, it was R&B, hip hop, funk, you know, more contemporary styles. Most of the other guys weren't readers. I was pretty much the only guy who, well, a couple of the other guys read, but not like gigging readers, you know, but were great players, you know. So with that gig, it was a different kind of experience for me coming into this thing, that all those guys would have to take time to learn all the stuff, as I mentioned before, but there was a certain thing, they were well steeped in that type of music, you know, the R&B, and it was a completely different atmosphere and a different vibe, you know, which is like, in terms of my learning curve as well, having played some of that music before and then doing this thing every single week for like 5 years, it was like, oh, this is brilliant, you know.
How was it playing for Bill Clinton?
Oh, yeah, OK. So after Andy Ross's band, the trumpet player, John Hinch, recommended me for the Drifters. And then I just found myself at rehearsals. There was no audition or anything. It was just on John's word, because, again, that had charts with it as well. And he said, oh, no, this great drummer, you can read and blah, blah, blah. From that point there, the following week after that, it was like 4 gigs a week. 4 or 5 gigs a week from March to the end of July, and then from September to Christmas every night.
Wow.
So it was proper full on, you know. So I did that. That was 1995 that was, and I did it played with them for 11 years. So over the course of that time, we did loads of different types of gigs, and in the beginning, loads of cabaret clubs, and because there were loads of them, you know, there were loads of clubs, corporate gigs, theatres, you know, going abroad, all over the place. It was a great, I would say, apprenticeship in many ways. And well, before I joined, they played at the band played at the White House for Bill Clinton. A number of years into the gig, and they said, oh, we've got another call from Bill Clinton's office to do another gig. But this time it was in Florida, and there was an event that was being put on as a fundraiser. This fundraiser was following the Lewinsky scandal. And so it was in Willie Gary's garden, overlooking the pool. And loads of it, there was Jesse Jackson was there. It was like some kind of movie, you know, all the Secret Service agents there and all this type of thing, and all these celebrities and everything. And that was, yeah, so Bill Clinton's there, and we hung out there for about, 3 or 4 days, got driven around in limos and all that type of stuff. But it was a great experience. We got to meet him, and yeah, it was just one of those things when you're in the entertainment industry, they're just some of the lovely things that can happen.
It's a funny thing, isn't it, in entertainment, because it's that thing where you can be like, oh, you know, we're performing for the richest family in India in this ridiculous 5-star hotel, and then like you finish the gig, you fly home, and then you're in Tesco. It's weird,
doing your
isn't
shopping,
it?
yeah.
And it's that weird thing where you've got to try and stay balanced, haven't you?
Yeah.
Because it's so the highs are like so like high, and then it's like normality, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that thing like how did you manage to find balance in life between like performing for presidents
Yeah.
and like performing at like Sebastian Coe's house or something, you know, and all of those kind of things? Like, where do you find the balance, or is it just me because I'm just wonderful? And I make you put the washing on.
No, I think it's not necessarily, I don't know. I think sometimes because you are there to do a job, but it's something that you really love doing. And it just so happens that it's entertainment, and it's in that time. It's not the 9 to 5. It's in other people's free time. So you're there entertaining people when they're letting their hair down and having a nice time. When you get to meet these people, you get actually to meet the person, not all the hype around it and everything. They'll just be people like you or I, you know. So, and well, you know this. I mean, with Brian and everything, you know, jetting around the world and doing all those gigs.
Oh yeah, I think it's trying to find the balance, isn't it? Because literally being on tour with people, you watch them morph into this person who is not capable of doing anything without the tour manager, and it's like
there is there are people like that, aren't there?
So what's happened to you?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and then they go home and say, oh, I haven't got any food, and it's just bizarre. It's that thing of you've got to kind of be somebody outside of the gigs that you do, you know, and remember that, you know, it is a job, but you're there to have a good time, you know, and enjoy the experience at the same time, but not lose yourself within the whole thing.
But I think that's part of, like, you know, going back to when I was doing all the training, it was like I was just mixing with, you know, people who had quote unquote normal jobs. They would be plumbers or builders, or they'd work in a shop, or they would do whatever, and it was just like normal, you know. It's and not that the other one wasn't normal, so to speak. They were just people again. So it was interesting, and I think having something, I came to a point where when I was playing and practicing a lot, that I was getting to that point where I was almost burning out because I was just doing too much. And the fitness side of things and training was a complete break. The people that I would go and mix with didn't talk about music or albums or this, that and the other. They were just, you know, we were just going there and training, and they might talk about other stuff, or, you know, we would just talk about training, and it was just a complete flip, and it was actually a really nice break from the intensity of trying to get better and, you know, having that drive to, you know, forge a career and do all that sort of stuff. So I think there are things that I did that kept my feet on the ground a little bit more. I mean, I remember you saying, you know, when you did stuff with Crisis and all that type of stuff, I mean, you see a whole other side of life, don't you, when you do that, and that helps you to do that.
I mean, it's using the music to help other people, isn't it? You know, and it's and not having a massive ego going, I'm not going to play for homeless people. You know, it's just bizarre. It's like, no, I'm going to actually use my skill and my talent to give other people a good time. You know, that's what it's about. The mindset of musicians, you were just talking about feeling burnt out. It's so funny with the arts and entertainment and stuff. Like when you were saying that you were getting burnt out, is that because it's that thing of musicians never know where the next gig's going to come from, so I've just got to literally take everything. You know, was it that kind of mindset, or was it just, hey man, it's just opportunities, it's just things, more stuff to do, or was it like, I've got to chase the money? Like, what was the mindset behind doing everything that you could do until you burn out?
It was never, well, the thing about it is, because I was so passionate about the doing, it was never about the money. So it was always a case of, and I'd always been told by loads of different musicians, play as much as possible, play with different people, because that's how you kind of make connections. That was your network, you know. So, so in the early days, and all musicians do this, they take virtually everything, and they get into the habit of just saying yes. And yes, you need the money to survive and everything, but the thing about it is that you just want to play. And back when I was younger, my dad would always say, you just need to play, because it's all about getting experience. And when you're younger, you're like, yeah, experience, whatever. But he was right, you know, I just needed to play with different people, even if it was the case of 3 different bass players. As drummers, we're like that with bass players. And playing with 3 different bass players allowed me to see what one bass player would do well, what another player would do well, and they might not be the same, or they've got their own unique voice, and some of them are really amazing at this one thing, and some of them not so good at other things. So you could kind of compare and contrast. In the same way that it's very easy once you get into this kind of mindset of doing a lot of practice and it all becomes very blinkered, is to kind of lose sight a little bit of, you know, yes, why you're doing it is because you love doing the thing you're doing, but sometimes you do need to turn it off and put it behind you. I remember going to a lesson with Bobby Armstrong, and he would say, okay, here's some stuff to practice, go away for 2. I was like, right, okay, I'm going to get this down for the next two weeks, and I would just be obsessed with the stuff, you know, because I was so eager to get the next bit. And the genius of his teaching actually was that he would only give you enough, and give you enough so that you could work on it to a certain depth. So by the time you came back to him in 2 weeks, it was good enough so that you could continue on, you know. So, yeah, the burning out is a thing, you know, and it's true of anybody who's madly, almost obsessive into anything, isn't it? You know, you just need to kind of have a little bit of a turn off.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said before, not forget yourself. Remember when I had lollipop head?
Yeah.
Too much singing, not enough eating.
Yeah.
That was the problem.
Yeah,
I remember when we went on our first holiday, it was weird. It was like, hang on, we've booked it, we're actually going.
Yeah.
This is weird.
Should
like,
we be doing something?
Like musicians. But the thing is, you're terrible. Darren's terrible with this, by the way. Like, we literally get back from the holiday, we land, and Darren's got a gig the next day. No little kind of ease him back. Oh, wasn't that nice, babes? Let's look through the photos. Let's look through the photos, babe. No, Darren's off, and I'm just like, okay, fine, bye.
Here we go again.
It is that muso thing, though, isn't it? You kind of don't want to miss out on stuff. And but has there been any gigs that you wish you'd done, or anything you turned down when you were like, or, you know, any gigs that you think, oh, that would have been nice, you know, like Luther Vandross or something, you know?
Oh, right. I remember seeing a video of one of my favourite drummers. He was a British session drummer called Kenny Clare, and he was being interviewed on Pebble Mill, which was filmed in the Midlands, and he was being interviewed, and the interviewer said to him, oh, is there anybody you've not played with who you wanted to play with? And his reaction was, I've never had any ambitions to play with this person or that person. To turn up on the day and play the session to the best of my ability was cool. But it just happened that he played with like Tony Bennett and all these amazing people, right?
So he was all right.
Yeah. And I've got a similar thing in a kind of way. Other than having like my musical heroes, people like, I don't know, if I was to think about musicians I would have loved to have played with, you know, people like Michael Brecker and, you know, Miles Davis or, you know, Chick Corea or whoever, you know. But I've never really had any serious ambitions to do that. I just wanted to get good and just have a great experiences. Because as soon as you get to a certain level as a musician and you start to be able to make, especially coming from jazz where there's a certain amount of improvising, you have the ability to add, subtract, stay in the background, come a little bit more out and do all these different things, and you have the ability to enhance the feel of the music, you know, to drive it a bit harder, to lay back a little bit, do all these things. Once you kind of have you've experienced that a few times, it's almost like when it feels great, there's nothing like it. When you're going through, you're playing a groove or you're playing with specific people, there's nothing that can replace that. It's you know, I think Billy Ward calls people who are non-musicians civilians. He says civilians will never experience what we experience. Right. And I understand what he means, you know, because when you get to a level where you can affect feel and affect a performance like that, there's nothing like that, you know. And I think in the way that I kind of, it's not that you are always chasing that, although some people do. It's like when that happens, and you're saying about choosing specific gigs to play, for example, somebody phones up, if those gigs are around, I, back in the day, would always prioritise those because it just felt so amazing to be a part of that creation of music. It was just unbelievable, you know, if you get with the right people. So I've never had any ambitions to play with any people, just to play as well and just get better and serve the music, really.
That's good though, isn't it? Because, you know, there'd be some people who'd be like, oh, you know, I always had an ambition to play on Top of the Pops or something, and like Top of the Pops doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh no, you're forever gutted.
Yeah.
But it's about staying true to to the reason that you got into it in the first place, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah, absolutely. So the gigs that you're doing now, how are they all going? How are you feeling about that?
I feel, even though they might not be like Wembley Stadium or doing this, that or the other, that's, you know, still good venues and still great artists. They're all great musicians, and I'm loving that. So even though, you know, I might not be posting on Instagram, I'm playing at this 25,000 seat arena, the musicians that I'm playing with are all amazing, and I'm getting so much from that. And even though it's on what you would call the evolution of a career, where you're maybe not doing such the huge gigs anymore, because once you've done a gig, you know, for 100,000 people, and you do it for 50,000 people, it's like, well, it's not a lot different. This is it's just the number of people. And then some people go, oh, how many people have you played in front of? It's like, I don't see gigs like that. You know, if I play in front of 100 people, but the gig is absolutely killing, that gig is like right up there as far as I'm concerned.
For sure.
I've done gigs in front of you know, tens of thousands of people, and it's like, yeah, it's just another gig. But if the gig's not as good, it's like, yeah, it's all right.
With all this comfort that you're feeling, you know, like you're sure of yourself, you're sure of your technique, you're sure of what you're going to play musically, you like the people you're playing with, all of this stuff. I guess the idea of nerves and nervousness doesn't creep in anywhere, because you've been doing it so long. When was the last time you felt nervous on a gig?
Oh. I don't know, you know. Somebody asked me this question a little while ago, and they said, "Oh, what do you do, you know, with nerves, or what kind of advice can you give somebody?" And I always, only from my own experience, because I've never really, even when I used to go and play when I was younger, maybe it was the exposure of being younger, and I just had less fear, maybe. But I would just go and play, and then I would play a gig, and then I'd play in front of people, and it wasn't a thing. But I do know that the confidence of knowing what you're doing empowers you. So it can give you that confidence. So when you're doing, you know, you're acting or whatever, and you're doing all your homework, not just learning the lines, but the backstory and understanding the character and how it relates to all the other people like that, that you've got to do that, you know, because that gives you the confidence to get up on, for me, to get up on stage and really know what I'm doing. And then you asked me about reading earlier on. 90% of the experience of a gig is not looking at the chart, is being in the music, both, you know, from what you're hearing, but also communicating with everybody and looking around and feeding off the crowd and doing all that type of stuff.
It's work ethic as well, isn't it? If you can get that work ethic kind of solidified and grounded early on, it kind of permeates through everything else that you do, and that work ethic becomes your kind of base, and then everything else kind of comes from that. It's like if you have your method of learning lyrics, you know, and then you keep doing that method, or tweaking it every now and then to suit you, however it is that you happen to learn, then that becomes grounded, and you think, okay, then I can put that into scripts now, and I can put that into song, and then as you're learning things, you're then putting, like you said, character and colours and tones onto the top of things at the same time that you're learning it. It's really interesting.
It is, yeah. What also is interesting is that no two people really do it the same.
No.
Because like your method of learning like scripts and lyrics, right, which is ridiculous, right? So when you telling me that story about one time when you were on a gig and they'd sent you the wrong version of something and you'd learnt it, and you turn up and, oh no, we're not doing this version anymore.
Yeah.
And you had one listen through it and you could do it. What's that?
That's foundation from ages ago.
Yeah.
Because my brain is immediately linking things together.
Yeah, yeah.
Immediately does it because I've done it so many times. But you've got to have that base.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the thing, isn't
And
it?
a method, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
And on that gig, you were at the front.
Solo vocal duties
Right.
in front of thousands of people.
Yeah.
So, it was mental,
Yeah, so in that situation, you can't rely on reading and doing all that. So it's a process of getting it into the memory, you know, where, you know, being at the back of the stage on the drums, sometimes you can get away with kind of doing the reading thing. But there are times when you can't. So you need to go, OK, I have a method for preparing, and if I've got some help with the chart, that's fine. But what's the method if I don't have the chart? Oh, I do this. And if you've got a method, you can learn that from other people, but no two people are the same, are they? So
Yeah.
you've got to kind of tweak it a little bit. And
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, you know, it's like you were saying, oh, we can get away with stuff at the back, but people are paying attention. People love the drums.
Yeah.
How much do people bang on about drumming all the time? Like when we say, oh, yeah, what do you do? It's like, oh, I'm a singer and an actor. All right, whatever. Oh, what do you do? I'm a drummer. Ooh. 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 And all into it. And I'm just like some hag in the corner, like, while Darren's being spoken to. People love the drums, and then every gig you do, oh yeah, that was amazing. That's the best drumming I've ever heard, and this, that, and the other. It's huge. Every person in the band has got.
I think the drums are very specific, aren't they? Because it's even if you know nothing about drums, you can as a drummer, you can always impress because there's something going on. Visually, there's something going on, isn't there?
Yeah.
Anybody who does anything really well is like, wow, that's amazing. You make it look so easy. And it's like, well, yeah, but how many years of training and, you know, rehearsal and practice has gone into that. It's always underestimated by people.
Yeah,
how much
for sure.
goes into it, yeah.
Thank you so much for watching and listening. However you're consuming this podcast, please consider subscribing, liking and leaving us a 5-star review, as this helps us to reach a wider audience. Your support is very much appreciated. Now back to the show.
When you are playing, you look like you're having a nice time.
Yeah.
Like some people look like, you know, just been hit by a bus or something.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, hello, engaging.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you always look so jolly on stage.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
I've not seen you look miserable once, I don't think.
No.
Which is brilliant,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah. Because I mean, it's brilliant. I'm playing this amazing instrument, you know, and I just love loads of things, so much about it that when I get the opportunity to do that, you know, I was going to say in front of an audience. If the audience weren't there, I'd still be the same.
Yeah,
So
you would. Drum kit and a
please
packet
keep
of
coming,
biscuits.
keep coming.
Yeah, don't leave him all out on his own now.
Yeah. I used to do Christmas present lessons for people, right? So, or birthday present lessons. And the number of times my husband, my wife, my girlfriend, brother, whatever, has always wanted to play the drums. I'm like, what are you waiting for? Just go and do it, you know? I mean, obviously there are certain things about the instrument which are socially tricky.
Why being massively noisy? Socially tricky.
There's a slight barrier to entry here, which is if you live in a flat, it might be tricky. Yeah, it's because it's loud, isn't it? It's, you know,
Yeah.
or it can be. So practicing and playing, if you don't have a detached house or a garage or a garden room where you can put the thing and it, you know, it's cool, it can be really tricky. And I feel for loads of students, you know, who go to music colleges and they are in flats. My dad padded out our garage, and so I could play every day, you know. And I was so fortunate to be able to do that, you know. And not everybody gets that opportunity. So the other thing is that they get a kit at home and then their parents, like happened to my dad, they just stopped him playing because they just couldn't stand the noise, and that was the end of it. And it was like, oh man, that's how many great talents were not discovered because of situations like that, you know.
Yeah, and also there's the whole thing about, oh, you can get an electric kit, but it doesn't feel the same, does it? It doesn't sound the same. It's just not the same kind of vibes.
Yeah.
You know, I guess it's like a real piano versus keyboard, you know,
guess
or
it would be,
something like
yeah.
that. Even though you can have the keys weighted and all those kind of things, I'm pretty sure like an electric kit, you know, ride cymbal or snare drum is going to react differently.
Of course.
You know, completely different. So
Yeah.
have you ever taught anybody who's only ever play drums on an electric kit and then they come to an acoustic kit now and they're like, oh my gosh, what's happening?
Yeah.
Have you ever had that?
Quite a lot, yeah.
Oh, right.
A lot of students in the music colleges, that's how they start, is that either on a little pad or they get an electronic kit of whatever name, shape, description, and that's how they start playing. But then when it comes to, because there are some gigs that you can use an electric kit on. There's a lot of like function bands that use electronic kits these days, because so many venues have noise limiters because of health and safety and all the rest of it. One of the ways round that is to use an electronic kit where you can control the volume and do all that stuff. But it's not the same, you know. It's not the it doesn't, from a point of view of playing, it doesn't feel the same. The dynamics don't quite work the same way, although they're way better than they used to be. So there are situations where you can do that, but the majority of gigs are on acoustic set. So the transition when they start playing electronic and they transfer can be quite an adjustment. You know, I had one student, and he'd been on an electric kit for years and years and years, and he came to lessons with me, and of course the lessons were on an acoustic kit. I remember him saying, "This is so different to my electronic kit." And what he did, he sold his electronic kit and paid for rehearsal studio time.
Oh, right.
And had a kit in there, and he would just go and practice in there. But the difference within only a matter of months was marked.
Right.
When he came in, all of a sudden it's like, wow, that's way better. And it was just because he was on an acoustic kit. There are, you know, other ways to kind of bridge that gap a little bit. You know, you can use different pads with different resistances, like Bill's pads, which are quite bouncy. And
Bill Sanders, right?
Bill Sanders practice kits, yeah. And they, I learned to play on those, you know, when I very first started, you know. So there are kind of ways and means of practicing if you know what those kits are really good for, and especially the electronic kits. I think they're really good, and the practice kits, they're really good for practicing coordination and stuff like that. If you can't get with the feel, at least it's about the mechanics of lining certain things up in different ways to work on this independence.
I know you were saying before, oh, you know, it's all about who I've played with. Sorry, it's not about who I've played with,
Right.
how many thousands of people I've played in front of.
Yeah.
However, you know, you've played at Glastonbury, you know, festivals like that. What's the kind of most memorable gig for you that you've done, and for what reason as well?
Well, the one with the Bill Clinton one, that was very memorable. I was always meeting amazing musicians who'd just been, you know, in the business for a long time, and they had so many stories. But as soon as they pass on, all the stories get forgotten and lost, and some of them were just amazing, you know. And I thought, well, I'm doing these things, I should document them, even just so I remember them, you know. So I started keeping a diary. And then I remember I came back from a trip, and I was doing a small production of The Wiz. The last venue was in London. And I did the last show. I loaded my stuff into my car. And then there were some of the guys front of house, the last show party or whatever. And I locked my car, and I went in and I said, "Look, guys, I'm just off," said bye, like this, went out to my car, somebody had broken into it.
Oh.
And they nicked my diary.
Oh, no!
Yeah,
no!
So all the stuff just went. So
Oh, no!
Yeah, so it's like, oh, no. And that was the year we did the Bill Clinton thing. When I came up through Nijo, my good friend Ben Castle,
Roy's son.
We had a little band together, and we would play like jazz fusion stuff. But and this is where the kind of the thing about having some kind of effect on the feel of music is when we played together, we would always, you know, because we were young and we were like just going for it, you know, playing these tunes. That was the first time and we were working with the great Otha Smith, an amazing guitarist, and whose feel is just ridiculous. And he plays keys and guitar and sings a bit as well. He's just a genius, you know. And when we played in that scenario with that band, we had a couple of gigs that were just absolute killer. They were just so good for loads of different reasons, because we were all experimenting with our own instruments at the time and practicing loads, and it was just a great time. And another, when I was with the Drifters, there was one time we did, I think it was is it the Philharmonic Hall in Liverpool? I think it was there. and it was just after there was some horrendous shooting somewhere, a massacre at a school, I think in this country. And we used to do The Greatest Love of All. And I just remember Peter Lamar was singing it, and the way that he introduced it and dedicated it to the memory of the people, it was just like, wow, it was so an emotive moment. And I just remember playing that tune, and it just felt different. It was just, there was something about it was just so special. And then it got to the sax solo, and it was just like, it was just amazing, you know, and it was just another one of those musical moments that surrounding all the things that were going on at the time just made it pretty amazing. I mean, I've done loads of other things which I could probably think of, but those ones stick out. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Cool. And it's the thing about being in the gig. Stop filming the whole gig, watch it.
Yeah.
Take part in it.
Because back then everybody was so present. You know, and just enjoying the thing. And it'd be rare if somebody had a camera.
Yeah.
So, which is why, you know, a lot of the times in some of the, you know, of my early days, I don't really have that many photos because you just didn't have a camera on you. So, and people wouldn't take cameras to gigs; they just go to a gig and experience the gig. Whereas these days, people are kind of viewing it through their phone and doing that, and the chances of them watching it again, probably
slim to none.
Yeah. I would say, you know, so it's a different world that we're in, and you know, and there are amazing things about it, and there are some things which I guess, having come up a slightly different way, you question, you think, is that probably the best way of doing it, or to be in the moment and experience, you know, you know, as a meditator, you know all about, you know, the whole thing about that is just being in the moment and you know, mindfulness and all that type of thing. And I think music is definitely a thing that affects us all in a very special way. Then if we can be part of that and not use technology as an interface into it, I think it's a good thing, yeah.
For sure. However, we do need technology to make Stage and Screen podcast.
We do.
Thank you all for watching. We appreciate you. Now, Darren's got to edit all of this now.
Yeah. I should have made it a lot shorter, shouldn't I?
There is that. Cell Bubs, where... I mean, so Darren.
Yes. How many names have I got?
I've lost count.
Yeah.
Where can we find out more about you and your teaching and your playing and all of that stuff?
Yeah, so you can go to darrenashford.com. I'm there. Instagram. I'm on Instagram.
Under Darren Ashford Drums, though, isn't it?
Darren Ashford Drums, yeah. And Facebook, Darren Ashford Drums as well. Or just Darren Ashford. If you type it in, you'll find me on Facebook.
Are you the only one?
There's only one.
I think there's another Darren Ashford. I think he's a lawyer.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Wow.
There's you and then a lawyer.
Yeah, me and a lawyer. That's it.
Well, thank you for coming on Stage and Screen.
Yeah, it's
You've
great.
been an excellent guest.
Thank you. That's a privilege. It's such a great, you know, when you had the idea of starting it, it was like, this is...
I didn't have the idea at all.
Who had the idea?
It was Denise and Nick. Hi, Denise and Nick.
Ah, we can blame you.
Thanks for making me. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No, but it's no. The thing about it is like, you know, there are loads of podcasts out there, aren't there? And it's. And you know the ones that you're going to stay with for a bit of time, because obviously I do loads of driving, so I'm always going through different podcasts and stuff. But you can always recognise the ones with not just the content and the whole idea, but how like you interface with your guests and and ask questions, because it is more conversational. Because I could have gone, oh, right, I'm going to talk about this and I'm going to talk about that. But when it's in the moment here and you're just asking questions that I don't know, or you know, I don't know where you're going to go with it, I frame the answers completely differently, and it's really cool. And it's been a pleasure being behind the cameras, watching the interviews happen. It's just been a whole, yeah, it's a real privilege.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks, Bub. I didn't pay you to say that or anything. And if you have any questions for Darren about drumming and stuff, then send him a message on his Instagram and all of those things.
If you want to, you know, if you are a drummer or you want to get into drums or anything about drums, just hit me up. Yeah, I'm on the internet, so yeah.
And you
Get in
could
touch.
find yourself in this lovely studio space, couldn't
Yeah.
they, Bubs?
Yeah.
You come and have a lesson with him and everything. That would be nice.
Yeah.
Or DM me on the Stage and Screen podcast Instagram page, and I will endeavour to get back to you if it doesn't go into my random requests bit, because it loves to do that,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Any questions for Darren, send them over to him or send them to me, and he'll be happy to answer them, won't you, Bubs?
I will.
If I let him out the dungeon.
Yeah, the
From
dungeon.
The editing
The
dungeon.
editing dungeon.
I'm joking. Well, thank you very much, Bubs, for coming on this show.
That's
You've been
all right,
brilliant. Such a good guest. So
Aw.
chatty. See, chatty guests are good.
Yes.
You can't have these one word answer people.
No.
That's not the way forward. So well done, Bubs. Very
Aw.
proud of you. Okay, excellent
Thank you.
work.
Okay.
Okay.